All right, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're enjoying your lunch. We encourage you to continue to do that, and I think there may be even a little left there for seconds, so help yourselves. My name is Todd O'Boyle. I'm the Deputy Director of Next Century Cities. We're so glad to see so many of you here, and we know we've got lots of folks from right here in the Mesa area. We've also got people from across the Southwest and beyond that are joining us today. I have the pleasure of moderating today's midday keynote. At Next Century Cities, we work daily with local government leaders from our member cities. We connect them with the resources they need to get better broadband. We help them form partnerships. We work with them on the nuts and bolts of connectivity. But another thing we do is we represent the interests of our member cities in Washington, D.C. on federal broadband policy conversations. So I couldn't be more excited to have this conversation today, bringing a mayoral voice together with a federal voice to talk about broadband. So, joining me on the stage today are Mayor John Giles, right here in Mesa. He has been your mayor since August 2014 and has really prioritized a solutions-focused approach to education and economic development. And as we've heard time and time again already today, you can't have that conversation without having broadband be a part of that conversation. I'm also joined today by your representative, Representative Andy Biggs from right here, but neighboring Gilbert, as I understand, but representing Mesa, and has been with us in Washington since January of this year, and before that spent, 14 years? And representing Arizonans in the state legislature. So we're going to jump right in. We only have a little bit of time today because we know there are many demands on both your schedules, so we're grateful that you carved out some time to talk to us today. But starting with you, Representative Biggs, as I've said, Next Century Cities represents the voice of mayors on broadband policy conversations in Washington, D.C. So I'm often in the position of carrying messages from mayors and local government leaders to Washington. But we really want to know, what do you in your federal policy capacity need from mayors? How can we be better messengers, and how can they be a better part of the conversation?
Thank you. Thanks for being here today, and thanks for letting me participate. Well, quite simply, I think you're aware that the local governments do a lot of regulation, and sometimes the states oftentimes, I guess, the states get involved, and then the federal government gets involved, and you get a real crisscross of regulation and over-regulation and burdens and obstacles that prevent the deployment of broadband infrastructure and broadband in and of itself. What I like to see and what I hope to see is mechanisms in place, such as what you do, to bring us information. You have expertise, everything from the engineering side to actually the policy side. And we need to know what that is, because if we're going to reduce barriers and facilitate the expansion of broadband, the federal government needs to know, I as the congressman needs to know, I need to know what Mayor Giles is thinking down in Arizona, in Mesa, Arizona, as well as John Lewis down in Gilbert. And I need to know that as their representative, so that we can, I can be aware of what's happening as there's so many cogs and spokes turning in Congress. I need to be aware, so I know. So that's the main thing that I think is your expertise, your information, and make it constant, and if possible, make it proactive rather than reactive. Because a lot of times, by the time stuff filters back up to Congress, it may be just simply too late for any more than try to race and try to beat a deadline. So I'd say information, your expertise, in a proactive style.
Understood. Now, Mayor Giles, I alluded a little bit to some of your priorities here on education and economic development. There's also a great broadband story to tell here in Mesa. For our guests here that aren't from Mesa, can you share with us a little bit about the good work that Mesa has been doing?
Yes, thank you very much, and welcome to Next Century. Thanks to the folks that are here from out of town. We are flattered that you're in Mesa, Arizona, and we're anxious to share our story, but we also appreciate our great partnership. and the resources that Next Century provides to our community. Thanks, too, for the Mesa staff folks that are here that have participated in the conference. Appreciate. I think they've probably told you a good part of the story of Mesa, Arizona, and so I apologize if I repeat anything that they may have said. But I think the mayor of Mesa, Arizona, much like the mayors of the cities that you come from, hopefully has a keen eye for the obvious, and that is that we are now in a world that is part of the Internet of Things. And most of the things that we touch, most of the things that our public safety people touch, most of the things, and we're also in the business of providing a lot of services. And the most efficient, we don't have a truckload of money, as the congressman indicated, and so we need to be smart in the way that we provide those services. And the way to do that is to take advantage of innovation and technology at every opportunity. Also, we're anxious to attract a strong business environment in the city of Mesa, and to cultivate and to be attractive to employers. The way you do that is to cultivate the infrastructure that they're looking for, to have an attractive workforce, but also to have the technology in place that will allow them to be innovative and productive, just like we want to be as a government. So to that end, we have tried to be very sensitive about acknowledging that broadband and technology has become an essential part of the infrastructure of our community. Much like companies and people need gas and water and asphalt, they need access to technology. If we want to develop a commercial corridor in our community, but we haven't put in the conduit and the dark fiber and the other dark resources to be invitive to a technology company, we stand a zero chance of being successful in attracting that company. So an example would be Apple, as you may have heard, a couple of years ago, decided to bring their global command center for all of their Apple cloud operations, iTunes, Apple Store, whatnot, to the southeast part of Mesa, Arizona. The reason they came is because there was a 1.3 million square foot spec building that had a huge amount of electrical capacity, all the dark fiber that they could possibly want. It was located across the street from a brand new water treatment plant. So that facilitated and attracted that huge economic development prize for our community. Much like that in the downtown here, hopefully when you click on Wi-Fi on your phone, you were given the option of taking advantage of the free Wi-Fi that is available in our downtown. So on a large commercial scale, but also on an individual scale, we're trying to just, like I say, acknowledge the reality that this is 2017, and then these are the services that people have come to expect.
So a follow-up question to you, Mr. Mayor. What are the biggest barriers to getting the job done? What is standing in the way?
Well, this is brand new. I mean, that's the Congress and I were talking earlier that these are not necessarily Republican Democrat issues. These are if we were to query what did the founding fathers think about broadband and local government making that available, to individuals and communities, or businesses, we'd probably have a healthy debate about that. So the barriers clearly are funding, financing. Mesa is a very frugal community, probably even more so than a lot of the communities that you're coming from. This is the largest city in the United States that doesn't have a primary property tax. We don't tax groceries. We have a very low sales tax. So in order to get things done, money is always a hurdle that we have to get over. But at the same time, if we're going to be successful, we have to be innovative. We have to take advantage of technology at every turn. Just like regulatory, as the congressman indicated, an overly aggressive regulatory environment is difficult for industry. We unfortunately have that obligation, so we need to be able to provide the necessary regulation without doing it too much. A great example of that would be this last legislative session. The industry, in anticipation of bringing 5G into the area, has already started pursuing legislation related to small cell. Mm-hmm. And I know in many parts of the country, this has been a fairly confrontational situation where industry kind of from the local government's perspective, comes in and just rolls them over and gets what they want with very little input from the local community. In an effort to avoid that scenario here, we joined with industry and negotiated, I think, a very fair bill that just came out of the Arizona legislature. So to answer your question, challenges would be finding opportunities to work with industry as opposed to against industry, and finding the way to finance a lot of these expensive developments to put in the dark fiber and the conduit and the things that will make us attractive.
And on the topic of small cells, those that would like to learn more, we do have a breakout panel later today on small cells and pole attachments. So that may be of interest, and there's also some good programming on financing later today. Congressman, we keep coming back to the word infrastructure. It's the word of the day. And it seems like it's been the word of the last several years. We're in a political moment where there's a great conversation swirling in Washington about infrastructure and infrastructure legislation. What is the possibility for broadband being a part of an infrastructure package that comes out of Washington?
Well, let me answer that in two parts if I can. First of all, Energy and Commerce Committee had a subcommittee that is actually looking into this issue, and that's important because, frankly, the federal government doesn't even know what all of its assets are, and so that's one of the things they talked about is how to determine their assets and inventory their assets and make sure that they're available. And also coming out of this committee is the idea of how you make those assets available on a consistent basis, so you don't have a different template from one executive agency to another who's managing these lands that people are trying to access for broadband infrastructure. So that's part A to this. Part B is really an interesting question in the sense that this $1 trillion infrastructure program that President Trump has spoken about is still undefined. It's still fluid, and so some people are going to push to get broadband infrastructure in there. Other people are going to, you're going to be caught up in the typical push-me-pull-you of the legislative process, which, if any of you were watching the healthcare issue, you'd see that there's real push-me-pull-you going on. But it is, I think the president is firmly committed on the dollar amount. There is mechanisms being put in place or discussed with regard to how you finance that $1 trillion. And then there are already state, and I would submit, I haven't seen really anything sub-state level, whether it's cities, towns, or counties, requesting infrastructure, but I know that states have been submitting lists of infrastructure that they would like to have in there. And I think that President Trump, if I can just speak to this, he's looking for home runs. He's looking for infrastructure items that will really have some sizzle and draw attention to them. Broadband may be one of those.
All right, so that could be encouraging. And Congressman Biggs, we've heard repeatedly from Next Century City members something consistent. I think this is one of those areas where you were alluding to, Mr. Mayor. This really isn't beyond the Beltway. We're not talking about Republicans and Democrats. These are local problems that necessitate local solutions. And we've heard from many of our members that access to federal lands, the permitting process, can be a real encumbrance to communities that want to partner or communities that want to build their own networks. Can you speak to reforms that might be possible at the federal level?
Yeah, part of what goes on here is the federal government is the largest landowner in the country, and we don't do a good job. It's managed by different executive agencies. They have inconsistencies on land use permitting processes and even the permits that they require. So part of the ENC, the Energy and Commerce Committee's examination is how to streamline that process and make so you don't get bogged down with overburdensome environmental impact statements and then these NEPA processes that can really be dramatic. But we try instead to facilitate use of the assets. And there's also an attempt to try to free up access to the land to the states and divest some of that from the federal government so that it can move into private sector hands for these types of infrastructure and other infrastructure projects as well. So there is a movement afoot in Congress, a very serious movement afoot, and there are actually some, I don't know what the plural of caucus is, but there are either caucuses or caucus, depending on how you determine that are actually working on these types of issues, trying to resolve and get those, ameliorate some of the concerns that you've talked about, which is the permitting process.
And Next Century City was a founding partner in the Senate Broadband Caucus, which tries to bring together. We launched actually with Senators King, Klobuchar, and Capito, so Democrat, Republican, and an independent, to really departisanize these conversations. And a colleague of mine likes to reflect that infrastructure was in the Constitution before the First Amendment was, through the postal roads, so that there's been a commitment since the founding to making sure that the networks that connect people and facilitate exchange of ideas and commerce have been with us since before we even got around to writing the Bill of Rights into the Constitution. So a bit of a digression, but question to you both. What can the audience do to be most helpful to your work, Mr. Mayor, first, and then to you, Congressman Biggs?
Well, like I said, the fun part about this is that this is a work in progress. I mean, it's evolving technologies, and I think a cooperative attitude on both sides, and we need to continue to cultivate that rather than have industry pitted against local government versus and whatever other caucusi might want to get involved there. The spirit of, I think we all share the realization that if we get in between the consumer and what they want, if the consumer thinks that the local government is the reason that they aren't getting the number of bars that they want, or that their 5G phone doesn't work when they cross the boundary from Gilbert into Mesa, Arizona, I'm not going to be in my job very long. But by the same token, if we don't strike a healthy balance and all regulatory responsibilities are totally ignored, and we have the aesthetics of our community, and we have multiple trenching going on, in a haphazard way, then the public won't be any less upset with me for shirking that responsibility either. So I think I go back to maybe this experience that's still very fresh in our minds of coming through this negotiation with the local providers to come up with some regulatory language that we could both live with is probably the model that we ought to look to more often when we have challenges with industry or with advocates for broadband or other emerging technologies. We need to listen first and regulate second, I guess.
Well, Ed, can you expand a little bit on what you asked for from industry, or what were the things that mattered most to the
Sure.
cities, and what were the things that where did you give?
Yeah.
Where did they give?
Well, I probably know less about this than anybody in the room, but the challenges, obviously, is that the old school cell towers are big projects, and that requires a lot of city involvement, a lot of oversight, a lot of issues related to that. As I understand it, the emerging technology with 5G is, rather than having one big tower that covers a large group of land, you're going to have literally hundreds of towers attached to city poles all over our community. And so we are used to, when somebody walks into our office saying, hey, I want to build a new cell tower, we say, wow, okay, we're going to have 5 of our crack people work on that for a week, so write us a check for $1,500 to initiate that process. Well, Cox is saying, no, I don't want to build one tower, I want to build 300 towers, and I really don't want to pay $1,500 times 300 when you're going to be in a cookie cutter operation. So we need to acknowledge that and be flexible. I think this current deal, I've joked that, well, we lose money, but we make up for it in volume. That was a joke, crowd. Okay, thank you very much. So, I mean, I'm not sure that financially we came out, on that deal as well as we should have, because there's some artificially low fees that were built into that by the industry. On the other hand, we did preserve our right to have a say-so on what happens in our intersections, to take care of aesthetics and safety concerns and the timing, so that we don't have 5 different trucks showing up at the same time, or 5 different trucks digging things up, over the course of 5 different weeks. So we maintained regulatory control. We made some concessions in terms of fees, and we just acknowledged the reality that technology is changing, and that our approach to regulating it needs to change as well.
Congressman, how can the audience be most helpful?
Yeah, thank you. And I want to express admiration for Mayor Giles here, because he's right. What happened in that negotiation and what we're seeing develop in the Arizona State Legislature is a process that is trying to get ahead of the curve a little bit, trying to catch up and it would ameliorate some of the concerns that you may have. But I go back to what I said at the beginning. There's nobody in Congress. I can't think of anybody, and I don't know everybody, but it's a big place. But I can't imagine any congressman or congresswoman that has any more expertise in this area than you in this audience today. And so, what I would say is, as Congress tries to follow, and I would encourage us to follow what happened in state legislature this year. I think it was a good model on regulatory reform, trying to get at it. But I think what we need, again, gets back to what I said at the beginning. When you see something, when you know something, bring us your data, bring us your information, share it with us. And if it's through your organization, that's the best way to do it, perhaps. But the idea is, we need to see it because we are making policy. And the other aspect to it too, and I want to inform you of this, is the agencies create regulations on very nebulous federal law, and then they will enforce and adjudicate on these things. If we have the data and the information that you can give us, Congress can then start reforms in a way that are more thoughtful, and restrain and constrain some of the difficulties that you have because we want to see this go forward. Everybody in Congress that I talk to is excited, and we see this technology going forward as a very positive thing. So what I need, again, information, your expertise. And when we get that, then we can get good policy, and if we get good policy, that's good politics. And so that's what I would say.
Good to hear. We have time for parting shots. Any parting shots? First, we'll get back to you, Mr. Mayor, and then to you, Congressman Biggs.
Well, I just share the enthusiasm on this topic with those who are in industry and those who are trying to help both government and industry. These are the challenging issues of our time, so it's exciting. I can't think of a more exciting topic or cause for you to be engaged in right now. The way that we incorporate technology into our lives is really going to be a game changer. It's going to happen, too, whether we rise to the challenge or not. It'll either happen in a haphazard way where they'll stand as a testament to our failure to do it in a productive, cooperative way, or if industry and those who are think tank folks and understand the pros and cons of it, and the advocates for industry and advocates for government, if we can all come together and we have this seamless transition as technology continues to evolve, good for us and good. We've risen to the challenge of those that we're called to serve. So I guess I would just say thank you for being involved in this. This is obviously one of the hot topics of our time. We're anxious as a government to be responsive to it. But as the Congressman indicated, we're not here because we have advanced degrees in technology. We need people, like you, like West Century, to explain to us in ways that we can explain to our constituents why we are doing what we're doing and the tact that we're taking. So this is a confusing topic. I mean, if you stop somebody on the street and strike up a conversation about net neutrality or about cell tower siting or What do you think of, what are your feelings on 5G? Anybody my age, you're going to get a blank stare. We need to be able to explain in understandable terms, in terms that the public can understand, and that so that they can know that people like Andy Biggs and John Giles are looking out for their best interests, but not being obstructionist and preventing them from having the things that they want that are going to improve their lives.
Congressman?
Yeah, thank you. I'll just say 2 or 3 things. Number one, thank you again for being here. Thanks for being in Mesa, Arizona today, and including Mayor Giles and myself in this discussion. Number two, I agree wholeheartedly with the mayor. It's a collaborative effort as we try to. You're as an industry, you're moving forward as rapidly as you possibly can, and it's important that, in my opinion, that government get as much out of the way as possible, and that's really the second point there. Then I think the third thing that comes to mind is whenever you have new technology, it's disruptive of the old patterns and the old path that we've all been traveling on, and a lot of people lock in and resist that. But this is a great time, and this particular technology allows for us to move to a more optimal path, and that's really what this is about. And so, thanks again for letting us be here, and we want to be collaborative partners to see this technology expand and go forward.
All right, so my parting shot to you, Congressman, is we want to be partners as well, and we want to continue to represent the voice of mayors on broadband conversations in Washington. So I'm gonna ask you here. I've got you cornered. Mesa is already a member of Next Century Cities, but the other communities in your district, we'd love to hear from them. Doesn't cost anything for the cities to join Next Century Cities. So when you hear from constituents and they say, we want better broadband, but we don't know what to do, we don't know how to get there, send them our way. We're always looking to grow our organization.
That I can do.
All right, Congressman Biggs, Mayor Giles, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.